growing a business, working full-time, having a family, wanting to focus on your health, and not feeling like you're moving the needle forward can be very frustrating. Some people call this a lack of motivation. And I have to agree, it can feel super frustrating to feel like you're in the rat race of motivation. Depending on how you feel that day is how you show up. But you've been showing up for so many days in a row that it just feels so overwhelming that you don't know if you can actually give it this one more day. I know whenever I get into this space, I start to feel like the victim. The outside has to change before the inside can change. But what Jim Rohn taught me is for things to get better, I had to get better. For things to change, I had to change. But how do you do that? That's when I came upon my way of actually not only keeping myself motivated to lose 100 pounds and to keep it off, but I actually put in the energy that I needed to while working full-time, trying to be a good parent and wanting to create a business that made the impact that I truly wanted to make. I found my flavor of motivation, and today we want to help you find yours. If you're ready to tap into the 5 different ways that we use to fuel ourselves and our clients so they can find their motivation and mojo again, let's go. It's time to redefine leadership. Welcome to Modern Leadership, where we see things differently. Our channel is all about empowering entrepreneurs like you to achieve the next level of success in business and life. We believe that you can create a massive impact in the world without compromising your personal life or family time to do so.
We're committed to providing you with actionable tips and strategies weekly to make that possible. So if you're ready to become a modern leader and make a lasting difference in the world, consider subscribing. Turn on notifications and dive into our community. We want to thank you for being here because the world needs your leadership now more than ever. Let's go. So the most important question I think here is, what does motivation really mean?
Okay, good question. I actually looked this up. So motivation is the reason or reasons one has for acting or behaving in a particular way. The general desire or willingness of someone to do something. Now, the one thing that this definition doesn't have is what our individual flavors of motivation are. Because there's some people who are motivated by pain. Some people are motivated by pleasure. Some people are motivated by, like, who needs me to show up on my A game today? And we really have to identify what flavor of motivation works best for us. Now, it's definitely not something that I want to talk about, like you have to depend on motivation every single day. But I feel like when we ask really great questions, you can tap into that, especially on the days where you don't feel motivated. Instead of being your weakness, you can actually ask yourself questions to pull out that motivation. And it's a real great motivator because now you're modeling the behavior for others. And it doesn't have to be where you have to feel like it, but you can generate those feelings by asking yourself really deep and powerful questions. So how does motivation work? I think I'll pass that one to you.
Okay, so I think that motivation works this way. It's really about the stories that you have in your head, the things that are happening outside of you and how you interpret those situations. So that willingness to do something really all depends on what those stories are.
Okay, so can you give them an example maybe of something that you told yourself, a story that you had that got you excited in that specific moment?
I think one of the biggest ones for me was the whole waking up early or waking up when the actual alarm would go off. For me, my story was, I'm not a morning person. And that would play in my head over and over and over again. So of course, that wasn't very motivating for me. It just kept me the same. It kept me hitting the snooze button because that's what I would do. I'm not a morning person, so I would go back to sleep. My motivation came from having a desire for change. I wanted to wake up early because there were things I wanted to do. There were habits I wanted to change. So I was already waking up early, but I really wanted to start working out before I went to work, which meant I had to wake up earlier than that. But it was super hard because, like I said, I always thought of myself as not being a morning person. However, that desire to really want to wake up and work out because I wanted to feel better became stronger than those stories. And I started to reframe my mindset. Now, let me ask you this. Why is it so hard to stay motivated?
Okay, so this has to go back to like how the brain is wired. I'm going to try and keep it as simple as possible. But basically, your brain is like wired to see what's broken, wrong, or missing. So it's very easy to see that you're tired, that you deserve a break today, that you shouldn't wake up because of X, Y, and Z. And it's very easy to convince yourself of those things. It's a lot harder to reframe it, to think about all the reasons why you want to wake up. What kind of future? What kind of potential? What is it going to make possible that's not possible right now? That is something you have to pre-program into your brain because we don't naturally go down the avenue of positivity or growth or how is this actually going to impact me if I wake up? And so because we're constantly distracted, we need to get really good at focusing on the things that actually motivate us instead of pull that motivation away. And like we were saying earlier, everybody's wired a little differently. Maybe somebody, when they challenge you, maybe you're like, oh, really? I'm going to show you. Or maybe you're the opposite. Maybe it demotivates you and you're like, you're right, I suck. It's really that flavor you've got to find that's specific to you.
Okay, so let me ask you another question.
Mm-hmm.
Once we get motivated, how do we recreate that motivation later on?
Oh, great question. So when we identify whether it's the question that we ask ourselves that fuels us or the story that we tell ourselves, and basically I think of this as like a sentence in my mind that gets me to show up, we continually repeat that thing when we need it the most. So for example, if the alarm thing is like your thing that you're trying to fight right now, and you realize that when you remind yourself that you're modeling the behavior for your kids, you want to be able to wake up because you want to be energized to play with them on the ground, to be able to go out and run with them, but you can't do that at your current level of fitness. If you realize that that motivates you to get up, then that has to be now your reaction. So when you wake up and the alarm goes off and you're like, I deserve a break, it's time to remind yourself, you know what? I remember what I'm fighting for. I'm fighting for the ability of playing with my kids the way that I want to, on the ground, running with them and doing all of those kind of things. And today I get to take the actions that actually are more powerful than my words and prove that I'm here and that I'm willing to do what it takes to make that happen. And so you basically have these collection of stories and you find the ones that work best for you and you use them when you need them the most. Now we do want to hit on some of those stories, 5 different questions actually that will help you find and identify those stories, but we want to go through some of them here today. Now, these are the ones that we use for ourselves, but also a lot of our clients who are also business owners and make their family a huge priority in their life. But I also want you to know that this isn't the only way that you can motivate yourself. These are just the most common ones. So let's start off with question number 1. And that is whenever I find somebody that they have a very specific goal, I ask them, what about that goal is important or meaningful to them, to their family, and to the world? I want to ask them in 3 different ways because I want them to feel like this is not just a selfish thing in terms of like you being able to achieve something for you, but that it'll also impact your family and it will also impact the world. Because we know that you're a family-driven entrepreneur and you're somebody who's going to make a huge impact in the world, but also do that under your own roof. So we can tap into that as a resource. I feel like that is a very powerful thing that moves a lot of people who are family-oriented forward in their business. Now, the second question that I ask is I'd ask, if you were to give advice to someone, like let's say your kids, they were struggling with this thing that you're currently struggling with, your lack of motivation, what advice would you give them? Now, there's something that we teach inside of our life coach certification. It's called head versus heart. When we're talking about other people, when we're talking about our kids, somebody we deeply respect, we tend to talk in terms of what we call our heart voice. This is purpose, passion, love, potential. The last time your kid came up to you and said, I want to be this when I get older, typically we don't say, well, I don't think you're smart enough. I don't think you're tall enough. I don't think you're really going to be fit out for this. That's our head voice. That's what usually takes over when we say those things about ourselves. But when we tap into giving advice to someone else, it's much easier to get into our heart voice. And then I would just flip it around and say, why wouldn't you want to say that same exact thing to you? Because if you believe in them so much, why wouldn't you believe in yourself?
So question number 3 is, what used to energize you? Or when you had momentum and things were going really well, what were you doing?
Yeah, I love that question because a lot of times we feel like when we want to be motivated, it feels like we've never been motivated before. Mm-hmm. But that's not the truth. The truth is you were on fire. I mean, even the title of this video is how to get your mojo back. That means you had your mojo before, right? But guess what? It's still there. You can tap into it. You can pull it up. You can actually think about the things that you used to do, who you used to hang out with, what you used to read, what you were listening to, and put yourself back into that environment because if it worked before, it's going to work again, right?
Okay, question number 4 is there anything in your current routine or environment that drains or demotivates you? And can you see making any changes that might help rekindle your motivation and drive?
Another great question, because I found like, even for me personally, sometimes like when I'm scrolling social media, I'll come across either someone or something that kind of like feels like it demotivates me, but yet I don't unfollow that person. I continue to wait for them to pop up again. What's crazy is like just how we said, like we all have that different flavor of motivation. We all have different flavors of people who actually motivate and excite us. Like there's some people who are like, Marc, your energy is crazy. Like get out of here, right? And there's some people who are like, I love that energy, right? So we'll naturally be pulled towards some of those people who inspire us, but also we can be pulled towards some of the people who actually don't inspire us. And when we get pulled by the people who don't inspire us, that's when we have to take some sort of action, right? Whether we don't follow them anymore, we click the little hide button, do something to that respect, because if you know that it's going to demotivate you, even if it's somebody who's having massive success and you could use it to fuel you, if you're somebody who like really wants to make sure that you eliminate the outside noise, figure out like, what are some of those things that demotivate you and find a way of setting up an environment where you don't see it anymore.
And it could also be that the reason why you're following these people is to justify why you're not progressing, why you're not motivated.
Yeah, that's a very key point. Like when you understand how life coaching works and how your brain works, sometimes you will set yourself up for failure by putting yourself in that situation, by continuing to follow certain people and to basically allow you to convince yourself every day to not do the hard things. It's crazy when you understand how the brain works like that. And when you can see that, you can actually become aware of it and then eliminate it so that it no longer runs the show for you. Now, here's the fifth question that I like to ask. And that is like, how is the fact that you're going through this situation an actual opportunity in disguise? Like, how is the fact that you're going through this actually proves that you're the type of person, not only that's willing to lead yourself through it, but is the go-to person to help others through it in the future? Now, we do want to hear from you. Which of these 5 questions most inspired you? Now, there's one caveat to this. When you get really good at inspiring yourself, the next logical question is, how do I inspire other people? And we want to hit on that really quickly because the fact that you're going through this situation right now actually makes you, like we said before, the perfect person to be able to help inspire other people by helping motivate themselves. So let me ask you this. How can we use the tools that we just talked about today to help inspire other people?
Well, you can take these questions and as you go through them and you see what really motivates you, you can actually teach other people how to do it as well.
Yeah, I find that oftentimes when I need to learn something, when I need to solidify it, when I want it to become a habit, the best thing that I can do is teach other people. Because like Andrew says, like, don't be a hypocrite, Dad. And I can't be a hypocrite. It's very hard for me to teach this and not perform it myself. Now, you might get to this point in this video and wonder, okay, you guys hit on motivation, but how can I rewire my brain for a more positive thinking to make this happen on its own? And that's exactly why we made this next video. How to reprogram your mind for positive thinking. Tap the screen to check it out. Thank you for being here and keep leading from the front, leaders. Bye.
Bye.